All right, so ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling this idea of what we think we become. Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's a big one, right?
Huge. We're digging into this podcast episode you sent over, the one about like the actual power of our thoughts,
Yeah.
how they shape our reality.
And it's so much more than just, plastering on a smile and pretending everything's great. You know what I mean?
Totally.
What I find so fascinating is how this idea, it's like it weaves through everything. Ancient philosophy, modern neuroscience. This is deep stuff.
It really is. And the episode doesn't waste any time getting right to it. Like, it's not about denying the negative,
Yeah.
but being, intentional about the stories we tell ourselves.
Absolutely. And choosing which ones we're going to feed, right? Because let's face it, we've all been there, stuck in those thought loops of like, I'm not good enough or I'm going to mess this up. It's that self-fulfilling prophecy thing.
Totally. Oh, it's like, if you're convinced you're going to bomb that presentation, your brain's like, all right, let's make it happen.
Exactly. Our brains crave consistency. So if you believe you're going to fail, you might actually start sabotaging yourself without even realizing it, just to prove those beliefs right.
Wow. It's like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So how do we break free from those negative thought patterns? Especially when they feel so, ingrained.
Well, I think understanding the why is a good starting point. Like, our brains are wired to focus on potential threats. Survival mechanism, right?
Right.
Kept our ancestors safe from like saber-toothed tigers and stuff.
Makes sense.
But these days, those threats are often less about physical danger and more about, what people think of us or failing at work.
So that feeling of like your heart racing before a big presentation, that's just our inner cave person freaking out about being banished from the tribe.
Exactly. And those deeply rooted fear responses, they can lead to thought patterns that, while not life-threatening, can definitely hold us back. The key is realizing we have a choice. We don't have to be prisoners of those old, fear-based thought patterns.
So where does mindfulness come in? The episode mentioned it as a tool for like rewiring our brains.
It is.
But it's one of those terms. What does practicing mindfulness actually look like?
Okay, so imagine you're sitting by a stream, right? Your thoughts are like leaves floating by on the water.
Okay.
Mindfulness isn't about stopping the flow of thoughts completely. That'd be like trying to stop the stream itself.
Right.
It's more about observing those thoughts without judgment, noticing them as they come up and letting them drift on by.
So instead of getting swept away, it's more about becoming the observer.
Precisely. And in that space of observation, that's where we find our power to choose. Do we cling to a negative thought and let it spiral? Or do we let it go and choose a more empowering perspective?
So it's not just positive thinking then, it's deeper. Awareness, observation, and then the choice. This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, it really is. It's about recognizing when that inner critic is in the driver's seat and having some tools to shift gears. And one tool that gets a lot of attention, and for good reason, is affirmations.
Okay, affirmations. I've got to be honest, I've had a, a complicated relationship with affirmations.
Right.
Sometimes they feel powerful, and other times, they just don't quite click.
Yeah.
What's the secret sauce to making them actually work?
Well, I think the key is understanding that affirmations aren't about denying reality or pretending something's true when it's not.
Right.
It's about consciously choosing the stories we want to tell ourselves, like consciously feeding the thoughts that actually support us, that help us grow.
So instead of that constant loop of, I'm terrible at this, it's more like, okay, I'm still learning, I'm open to the process, something like that.
Exactly. It's like creating new pathways in the brain, new grooves for our thoughts to travel. And like anything new, it takes practice. It takes consistency.
Right.
Our brains have probably spent years, maybe even decades, reinforcing those old negative thought patterns. It's going to take some time and effort to rewire things.
That makes a lot of sense. But it's not just about what we tell ourselves internally, right? Like, the episode also talked about visualization, and they shared that story about Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah.
Wild story.
That's a great example of how visualization can go way beyond just wishful thinking and actually start to influence our reality.
Like wild.
Jim Carrey, way back when he was still relatively unknown, wrote himself a $10 million check. Dated it for Thanksgiving 1995. Carried that check with him everywhere he went, visualizing himself as this successful actor. And guess what? A few years later, lands his breakout role in Dumb and Dumber, gets a paycheck for, $10 million.
I know it sounds kind of, out there, but there's something about that story. Is there any actual science behind this whole visualization thing?
There actually is. There's a good amount of research suggesting that visualization can have a real impact on our behavior, on our performance.
Really?
When we vividly picture ourselves doing something successfully, our brains, they kind of interpret it as mental rehearsal. So this mental rehearsal, it actually strengthens the neural pathways related to those actions, making it more likely that we'll succeed when we actually do the thing.
So it's not just daydreaming. It's like we're actively creating a mental blueprint.
Right.
It's bridging the gap between just thinking it and actually doing it.
Exactly. And that takes us from positive thinking to aligned action. Because here's the thing, thoughts are powerful, incredibly powerful, but they're just the first step. To really make those thoughts a reality, we've got to align our actions with them, create an environment where those thoughts can actually flourish.
So it's not enough to just have these positive thoughts in a vacuum. We need to surround ourselves with people, experiences that support that positivity. It's about curating our mental ecosystem. Right?
Yeah, you got it. Just like a gardener chooses which plants to put in their garden, we have to be mindful of the seeds we're planting in the gardens of our minds, because whatever we water, that's what's going to grow.
So we're talking about a whole system, right? Thoughts, actions, our environment, all working together. But let's get practical.
Yeah.
What are some things people can actually do to cultivate that positive mental space?
Well, the good news is it doesn't have to be this huge, overwhelming thing.
Right.
Even small changes done consistently can make a big difference.
Right.
The podcast episode, they talked about the power of starting your day with intention. Just taking a few minutes each morning to be present. Notice your breath. Notice how your body feels.
Just like a reset button before the day gets going.
Exactly. And as you go through your day, start to notice those negative thoughts when they pop up. Don't judge them, just notice them. And then consciously choose a more empowering thought.
Okay, so instead of, ugh, I'm so stressed, it's more like, okay, I can handle this. What's the one next step I can take?
Exactly.
Like having your own little cheerleader in your head instead of that inner critic.
I like that. And what about our external environment?
Oh, right.
That plays a big role too.
So any tips for curating that environment to support more positive mindset?
Absolutely. Pay attention to the people you spend your time with. Are they lifting you up or bringing you down?
Yeah.
Surround yourself with people who inspire you, who share your values. And don't underestimate the power of your physical space either.
Oh, interesting.
Create a space that feels calm, inspiring. Maybe add some plants to your workspace, or listen to music that uplifts you. Even just decluttering can make a difference.
This has been amazing. So insightful. We've covered so much ground today.
We really have.
If we had to boil it all down to one key takeaway, what would it be?
For me, it's that we're not just along for the ride when it comes to our thoughts.
Right.
We can choose our thoughts, we can cultivate them, we can make them work for us. It's a journey of self-discovery and growth.
And it all starts with that awareness.
Yes.
Noticing those thoughts.
Yeah.
Challenging the ones that aren't helping us and choosing the ones that will. So for everyone listening, as you go through your day today, ask yourself, what thoughts will you choose to water?
Because in the garden of your mind, every thought is a seed. Choose wisely, nurture intentionally, and watch your reality blossom.
Love that. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep choosing thoughts that empower you to live your most extraordinary life.